All right, everyone. Welcome to the PWCC Weekly Live Vintage Card Watch Party. We are here building collections, not portfolios. I'm Rob Gerard, your sports card therapist, and I am solo for the first 10 minutes. And then I have Dylan from Cards with a Story on Instagram, on Twitter, and on YouTube. He's been on the show before, he's been on the PWCC show before. I have him coming on. In about 10 minutes. So definitely looking forward to that. And I am proud to say that this show is brought to you in partnership with PWCC. And so a major shout out to them and all their staff. And as we do each week, we are focusing primarily on sports cards that are from 1979 and older. So that's the T206s, the Cracker Jack cards, the Gaudy sets, the Play Ball sets, the first ever Bowman and Top sets, and everything in between. Don't forget, you have 1 hour until the auction begins. That's when you got to have your finger on the button if you are trying to get a specific card. Also, stick around because usually for the last 15-20 minutes or so, we're just sitting here, we're chatting vintage, we're chatting the hobby in general because the auction is over. So, feel free to hang out after that and definitely contribute. Also, if you cannot watch the whole stream with us, or if you miss a week, do not worry. All the streams get saved to the YouTube page. Also, if there's a card that you want us to pull up so that we can discuss it, just mention it in the comments. We will make sure to pull it up and talk about it. How is everyone doing? I hope everyone is doing well. Here on the East Coast, it was a very hot day. It was very humid, so I was out in the pool with the kids and just having a great time doing dad stuff. Nothing better than that. There's nowhere else I'd rather be than, just spending time with the fam. So that's what I was doing. I'm not sure if any of you guys were able to check out the YouTube live that I just did for my podcast, Sports Card Therapist. I had Pete, who is Sports Card Pete on Instagram. I had him on. We were just talking about consolidation. He was talking about how he has a spreadsheet with his top 25 cards in his PC. And basically, after the top 25, everything can go if the right card comes along. And really, uh cards 20 through 25 can really go, and those can get moved if he finds the right card. And that is something that I actually just started to do. I talked with him last week about it, and I put out in a spreadsheet, listed them in order of, like, I guess my favorite cards that I own, and really just started looking at them and figuring out which cards that I want, which cards do I need, which cards can I get rid of, because I'm thinking about, National is exactly a month away. 4 weeks from now, my bags are going to be packed for National. 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, I'll be back home from National doing the show again. So, National's right around the corner. I hope to meet a lot of you guys that are going to be there. Hopefully, most of you guys are going to be there. If not, it's all good. I could always catch you at another show, or we could chat somewhere else. But yeah, man, National is one of those things where if you've never been, you got to go. And if you can't go because of finances or whatever, just keep it in the back of your mind that it should definitely be a bucket list thing for any collector, any kind of card collector. It should be a bucket list thing, because you never know what you're going to find there. Never know what you're going to find there. So we will jump right into it. We'll jump right into the show. Like I said, Dylan should be joining me in about 5 minutes or so. So my goal is to keep an eye on the screen while also looking at some of these cards. So, just to make sure I don't miss him. So let's see. So we are pulling up right now. Let's see what we're looking at. Okay, so we are pulling up some of these cards, and let's see. So first card we are looking at, we'll go through, I'll fly through them, and then we can come back and start looking at some. So this is a 1909 T206 Addie Ross Portrait PSA 2.5, and this is right now at $340. Real quick, Addie Ross is just incredible. He's someone that I think is undervalued. I think underappreciated, I guess you could say. So in 1908, he walked only 30 batters in 325 innings. That's an average of, off the top of my head, one batter every 10 innings. One batter every 10 innings. He also threw the fourth perfect game in baseball history, and he did that in just 74 pitches. He threw a perfect game in only 74 pitches. That's something that is incredible. But a good looking card. It's definitely off center, top to bottom, as you can see. Next, we have a T206 Christy Mathewson Maddie. This is dark cap and with the American Beauty back, and this is sitting right now in only an SGC authentic, and this is sitting at 725 right now. 725. Next, we have a 1932 Sanella Margarine Babe Ruth Type 2 PSA 2.5. That's sitting at 625. We have a 33 Gaudy Frank Crosetti PSA 6. That's sitting at 370. Look at this card, is incredible. This card just pops. Obviously, the centering top to bottom is off, even right to left. It looks like it might be maybe 60-40, maybe 55-45, but the image looks incredible. I mean, the thing looks like it was just printed yesterday. We have a 1933 Gaudy Carl Hubble, and that's a PSA 8. And it's a PWCC certified eye appeal rating, top 30%. That's sitting at $5K right now. We have a 1948 Bob Feller PSA 5 sitting at $340. Next, we have a 1949 Bowman Jackie Robinson rookie, PSA 4.5. And on top of that, it's PWCC certified eye appeal, top 30%. This thing is already at 6K. It is already. When I look at this card, I mean, it's definitely a good looking card, but I mean the squares, the checkers across his jersey are more prominent than ever. You could see it really across the whole card. I'm not sure how other people feel about that, but you can really see it across the jersey and then up through the red as well. I'm not sure if that's going to, turn anyone off just because of how prominent it looks. But next, we have a 1951 Bowman Ted Williams SGC2 that's sitting at 250. We have a 51 Bowman Willie Mays PSA 1. Right now, it's at 2600. Very nicely centered for a 51. For a 51, it's very nicely centered. I mean, centering all around looks like it's probably 60-40. But that, obviously that crease going right down the middle is just, such a detriment to the card. I mean, I think if anyone is looking to get themselves into a PSA 1 Mays rookie, this might be the card because of the crease right there. I don't know if I see this going for really high numbers. I don't see this breaking a PSA 1 record tonight, but still, it would be a nice little card to add for sure. We have a 52 Bowman Mini Minosa rookie PSA 8 sitting at 1,300 right now. This is a great looking mini card. Next, we have a 52 Bowman Mickey Mantle PSA 2, and this is PWCC certified eye appeal, top 30%, and that's sitting at 1675 right now. 1952 Topps Phil Rizzuto PSA 3 sitting at 115. Love that card. Love that image of Scooter. Next, we have a 52 Topps Mini Minosa rookie PSA 6. PSA 6. Top 15% eye appeal in what is considered probably the most iconic baseball card set of all time, 52 Topps. $1,500. Beautiful. Next, we have a 53 Topps from Roy Campanella. Campy, one of the greatest catchers of all time, in a PSA 8, and that's sitting at $975. And this is a PWCC eye appeal rating, top 30%. Look at that grin on his face. You could just tell that he was probably a blast in the clubhouse or in the dugout for sure. Next, we have 53 Topps Mickey Mantle short print SGC authentic. That's sitting at just $500 right now because of the severe paper loss. I mean, you have about 25% of the card that's paper loss. You have, I mean, I guess if there was going to be any section where there was paper loss, I guess I would prefer that. Although the NY, the Yankees logo on his cap is completely gone. And the skyline behind him is severely with paper loss. Plus, it has a huge crease going right down the middle. So this is not the prettiest looking card, but it's a 1953 Topps mantle. It's only $500 right now. So it's personally for me not the card I would want, but there is someone out there who is on a budget that is looking to pick up a 53 mantle. Here's your card for sure. And okay, so I'm gonna exit out of the full screen for a moment, and we are gonna bring Dylan on. Dylan from Cards with a Story. Dylan, how you doing, man? How's everything going?
Good, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely, absolutely. So you've been on here before. You came on here, I think, when I first initially started. I want to say probably back in February or March. I believe you came on one night with me, right?
Yeah, I think end of February or so. Yep.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, and you are someone that is y- especially on Twitter, always on Twitter. You're doing the buy sell trade thread for vintage baseball. Talk a little bit about that real quick. So, if anyone was interested that's on Twitter or they're not on Twitter, what is a buy sell trade thread on something like that?
So basically, pretty simple. So it's usually a weekly thing. I do mine every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So basically, I do anywhere from the 1880s up into 1980s, usually the cutoff. I personally just do baseball for mine. There's a couple other hockey, football, basketball ones, but really just all we really ask is, put clear pictures up of the cards. Any flaws that you might not be able to see, people usually appreciate you pointing them out, and then post a price with the card. And usually people will put on there if they're willing to trade, what they're looking for, stuff like that. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun the last 2 years now almost.
So basically, what you do is you post like, okay guys, here's the weekly buy sell trade thread, boom, and then people just go on there and post what they're looking for, what they're selling, trades, offers, all that stuff, and it ends up getting hundreds of comments, right? So you could basically just scroll through little by little and see like, okay, what do people have to offer and what are people selling and whatnot. And it's a good place to sell because just before I came on tonight, I recorded episode 189 of Sports Card Therapist, and it was a vintage collector who was consolidating down to um, 25 cards in his PC, and he uses a spreadsheet to figure out which cards are going to go and which cards he's looking for. So if you are looking to sell anything, obviously, if you have something super high end, you can send it to PWCC. Even not high end, you could really send anything to PWCC. But if it's something you're looking to do quick and maybe do it privately, a buy sell trade thread is a good option.
Yeah, and I think they're great, and it's a good option for people that are trying to skip out on the eBay fees. So a lot of people seem to be doing. That's what a lot of people say they like to do. So
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
you're not
So,
going right to your pocket, no one else's.
yep, definitely, man. So, real quick, what is it? What does your PC consist of? What is the avenue that you try to go in?
I'm a little all over the place, but I stick mostly um, Hall of Famer, pretty much vintage Hall of Famers. I usually stop collecting in somewhere in the 1960s. Um, I don't even really collect that many 60s cards, but usually 50s was my cutoff. But I recently started a project of like mid to high grade Hall of Famers from all the 50s and 60s sets, stuff like that. So, but yeah, I like pre-war personally more than anything, but I really collect anything up into the 1950s, so 1800s to the 1950s.
Gotcha. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. So let's keep going. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fly through some of these and just introduce them, talk about where they're at. And if there's any ones once I'm done, if there's any ones that you want to come back to, just keep a mental note of it and let me know and we'll come back to it.
Yeah, I got a couple in mind I was looking at earlier.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so we have a 1950 picking up where I left off. We have a 54 Bowman Willie Mays SGC 8. Oh my God, look at this thing. 3,900 right now. I mean, near perfect centering, near perfect registration. Everything about this car looks absolutely perfect. So, so that will likely come close to breaking a record, I feel like, as far as, for that card. We have a 54 Red Heart Mickey Mantle PSA 8, and this is PWCC certified. I appeal top 15%. This is sitting at 4,600 right now. 4,600. Then we have a 55 Bowman Mickey Mantle SGC4, another top 15% through PWCC for eye appeal. That's sitting at 775 right there. We have a couple 55 Hank Aaron's. One's an SGC 7 that's sitting at 1525, and one is a PSA 8 sitting at 5K. And I know all too well about the difference in this card between a 7 and an 8. I had bought one raw probably about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago. I bought one raw at a show, had it graded. It came back a PSA 7.5. And I could remember just looking at the price difference between a 7 and an 8. A 7 was probably around, at the time, I think it was probably around 1,500, and an 8 was around 10K. And I just remember saying, like, oh my God, this is nuts, and trying to figure out what my 7.5 was worth. And so that's definitely something that that I dealt with. So, and any thoughts so far, Dylan, on these few cards that we've looked at, whether if it's that gorgeous Bowman Willie Mays, if it's these mantles that are top 15% eye appeal, the Hank Aaron's.
Yeah, that mantle. I mean, I'm not a huge mantle guy, but
Which one?
That Red Heart. That's always been
Yep.
one of my favorite mantles. That's a nice one. Good centering on it. Good color.
Yeah, and so looks incredible. Definitely one of the best copies I've ever seen. It's a PSA 8, and for this to be in a top 15% eye appeal, that says something. That to me says that they think that this might be possibly a PSA 8.5 or a PSA 9. Just looking at that. And so the PWCC eye appeal that they give, like, it definitely has an impact on what the comps end up being. But one reason why I'm surprised that I think this got the eye appeals, because this is an old grade. If you look at the serial number, I mean, this thing was probably graded at least 15 to 20 years ago. So usually a lot of those cards were overgraded. Usually if you crack out an old slab like this, it'll come back a PSA 7.
Or 6, yeah.
But here we are, old slab and all, PSA 8, and they're saying, you know what? Based on this being an 8, this is in the top 15% for eye appeal. So it's almost like they pulled the old switcheroo on me. I'm kind of surprised here.
Definitely. That one's nice though. Good, really good centering.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
that background too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got that Topps Venezuela blue background kind of vibe to it.
Exactly.
Yep. So yeah, we have these errands right here. Next, we have a couple, I mean, iconic rookies. We have a couple iconic rookies. This 55 set is just chock full of really big cards. And right here, two of the biggest names in there. There's a 55 top Sandy Koufax PSA 4.5. That's going for 1150 right now. 1150. Then we have a Roberto Clemente BVG 5. And that's sitting at 2,600 right now. 2,600. Any thoughts on these, Dylan?
26 for the 5 is lower than I would expect.
Yeah, but I think the fact that it's a BVG, I think that's playing a role. If it was a PSA 5, it would probably be, significantly higher.
Yeah, I agree. No one likes package slabs.
Well, yeah, and it's not even. I think it's partially the Beckett slab, but it's also partially that I think that there's this not growing, but there's just this idea that BVG, very similar to like very old PSA slabs, that they were overgraded. So if we were to like crack this out and send it to PSA, I think most people would think that there'd be at least a full grade less. It would come back a PSA 4 maybe. And you can't, it's not the same for everything, right? It's not the
Yeah,
same for everything. But Tom Grant right here says a BVG5 is a PSA 4 at best.
for sure.
So I would agree with Tom. Tom, you know your stuff. You're second to none when it comes to these kind of things. And I mean I agree. So I think that, as consumers and as buyers, I think that we've gotten so much smarter. Really, I think the pandemic just like really forced everyone into like this, like, and don't get me wrong, collectors were very smart before the pandemic, but people are a lot smarter, I think, than they used to be, and they're just becoming a much more well-educated collectors and buyers and sellers. And I think that's why it is probably harder to make money now, with the fact that the hobby has corrected and people have left and whatnot. But
Right.
people have just gotten a lot smarter. So I think, there was a time where if you had a BVG5, if someone was trying to sell that to me, they could probably talk me into paying a PSA 5 comp for
Right.
that, right? And I would look at that now and say there's no way.
Never.
You
Yep.
you can keep the card if you're trying to get a PSA 5
Yep.
comp for. I don't want it. At the most I'm looking at PSA 4, and that could be me being generous as well.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely,
So,
people are catching on to a lot of the old grading
yeah. And
habits.
and
Grading.
same thing too when it comes to SGC, right? We all, like, I know SGC now just started with, the authentic qualifiers. So now you know why it was graded authentic, but they don't have a miscut qualifier. They don't have an off center qualifier. So what happens is, people get like 51 Bowman, for example, or a 61 basketball Fleer. You get some of these cards that are just these sets that are just famously miscut, famously off centered. No one wants a PSA qualifier on their slab, right? But what happens is they'll crack it out, they'll send it to SGC, and yes, it'll get a lower grade. Like if you had a PSA 4 off center, you might only get a SGC 2, but still an SGC 2 still looks sexier than a PSA 4 with a qualifier.
Exactly.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it
Yeah.
nuts? Like,
Just
it's
avoid them at all. I know most people I talk to avoid the qualifiers too, but it is crazy.
yeah, yeah.
If,
Um
no.
so I could remember, so I went to the Philly show. You're from Philly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I went to the Philly show. I want to say, I don't know what, 3, 4 months ago, whenever it was, and they're so heavy with vintage. I love it. And so I said it was at that show that I made the decision that that I wanted to move my 51 Bowman mantle, and I just moved it last month. So it took me a few months to actually move it, but
Yep.
I finally made that decision, and it was a PSA 4 with the off center qualifier PSA. So we're going around, and there was a guy there. It's like, oh, I know the biggest vintage dealers here. We'll get this move for you today, no problem. We went up to 4 of them, and they're like, hey, you interested in 51 mantle? And they'll perk up, and they're like, yeah, what's a grade? And then they're like, PSA 4 off center, and they're like, I don't want the qualifier. And it's like, oh my god. So there is this mentality with just like, let me crack it, send it to SGC. They don't have the qualifiers, so
Might lose
uh,
a grade, or he might, but
yeah, exactly. But
worth people though.
yeah, yeah. But then, there's also, that growing sentiment of buy the card, not the grade.
Yep.
So, but it is hard to buy the card when a qualifier staring you in the face.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I've been trying to. That's been my motto lately. I've been going for a lot of fives that look like sevens.
Hey, if you could find them, I think we'd all want to buy fives that look like sevens.
Yeah, I'm sticking with those mid grades, but high I feel mid grades been working out good for me. So that's
Yeah.
where I'm lately.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So we have the Koufax, which is beautiful, the Clemente, which is beautiful. Moving along, now we're getting into that 56 tops category. We have 56 tops, Ted Williams, PSA 7, sitting at 925 right now. 56 tops, Roberto Clemente, SGC 2, sitting at 210. All right, now going on to the next page. Let's see where we are at. Mm-mm-mm.
There's another Clemente 56, right? The PSA one. like a 6 or 7 or something, I believe.
Yeah, look, there's a few of them. So we actually, yeah, we selected all of them to look at. So there are at the very least three that we are looking at. So we have a couple more PSA set or 56 tops Roberto Clemente's. This is a PSA 7.
That's,
This is sitting at 1375 right now. And this is this is someone that was like, "Oh, let me, dress this puppy up a little bit." So what they did was this is still the old cert number. You could see this should be in an old holder, but what they did was they sent it in to have it reslabbed. So it just has a modern, cleaner, more fresh look on it. But when you look at the cert number, it's a PSA 7. So my gut would say this is a PSA 6.
yeah, I agree. That's still my favorite Clemente card, though.
Is it the 56?
Yeah, it's always been my favorite.
So same portrait as the 55.
Yep.
But you have him jumping up for a fly ball right here up against the wall.
Yeah, I've always loved that background.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. You could see the billboard and everything. I mean, there someone's company right there got an incredible promotion on that 50 and that 56 Clemente,
They did.
So then we have a PSA with the white back, PSA 4 56 Clemente. This is a brand new grade right here. If you look at the cert number, this thing begins with 6.9, so it was likely graded within the last 6 months. This has some surface issues. It obviously has some fading. You look at the two cards, I mean, they're night and day. I mean, so I mean, looking at them side by side, this definitely looks like a 7. This definitely looks like a 4.
Right.
If anything, I think you might be able to argue that, this might even be a 3 with some of the fading going on. But regardless, it says top 30% for eye appeal, but I don't know if I would necessarily co-sign that. I mean, you have the red print dot right there. You have a couple red print dots on this thing, plus with the fading and whatnot.
Fading drives me nuts sometimes.
Yeah, the surface is big. Surface is a big thing. What's more important to you? Would it be surface issues or would it be centering?
I guess I could live with a little bit of fading like that, but any other surface issues, I don't think I could really deal with any scratches or.
So you would prefer this card right here, this PSA 4, you would prefer over this if this was like off-centered?
Potentially, I think so. Yeah, if that was good amount off-centered, I'd say so.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, if I'm gonna go with a card like that, I want it perfectly centered and best I can at least.
And the thing is too, I think like once you've really kind of got that acquired taste, I think once you've gotten that acquired taste for centering, you can't unsee bad centering.
Yeah.
You can't unsee it. It's like your mind is immediately drawn to it. It's.
Yeah, it'll drive you nuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
First got in the really collecting vintage, it never bothered me, and everyone talked.
But then you start to develop that taste for it. It's almost like drinking black coffee or drinking wine or something, right? It's like you don't have the taste for it, but if you do it enough, you start to really love it. And that's how it is with centering.
Why do people care so much? So then, over the years, I'm like, now I get it.
Yep, absolutely. And Tom Grant echoes what I had to say. He said, "Yeah, how can that 4 be a top 30%? It's got snow on his face." And I mean, I agree. I think if it was maybe like a 2,
yeah,
and I would say, okay, that's probably a top 30% for 2s, but I don't know if top 30% for 4s.
4s, yeah. That was a lot of snow. That reminded me of the 57 set, 58.
Oh yeah.
Both get a lot of that.
Oh snow. Yeah. Oh, that 58. Forget about that mantle image of the 58. I mean, every time I see it, I feel like my mental image of that card has snow on it.
Yeah.
So next, as far as 56s go, we have a Willie Mays SGC 5.5, and I had Jonah, who is Jonah, right?
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep. So Jonah was on here last week, and I believe it was him that told me that Willie Mays was actually called out on this play.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he was called out on that play. And so right to left, it looks pretty close to 50-50, but top to bottom, it looks closer to 70-30, maybe 80-20 for centering. Next, we have 56 Mantle PSA 3. I mean, talk about one of his biggest cards, right? I mean, if you're talking about Mantle and his biggest cards,
That's
I mean, this has to be
one I'm after myself.
maybe. I mean, you figure 52 tops, right? So 52 tops has got to be first, then 51 Bowman. You can make an argument that this is even bigger than 53 tops, or even closer to bigger than 52 Bowman. I don't know. I'd be curious if people in the comments, if you guys want to comment what order you think that maybe Mantle's cards of importance are, and like at least the top five. I'm kind of curious to know where people think that this 50 that the 56 tops falls, because obviously it's an iconic image. We all know that this image has him catching the ball when in reality he didn't catch the ball, but we also know that 56 tops was his triple crown year. Triple crown year. This card is just, highly sought after, regardless of what the pop count says. This card will always be a card that people look to. It's one of the most iconic vintage cards there are. It's probably in the top 10 for iconic 50s cards, right? I mean, you got to figure with the amount of incredible rookies that there were in the 50s for baseball, this card, to say that like someone's like sixth year card would be in the top 10 of all iconic cards. I know I'm just making that up right now saying it's in the top 10, but what do you think? Do you think this is a top 10 50s card?
You can make a case for it. I think a lot of the rookies end up trumping the first five spots, I'd say, but with the Clementes and the Mantles, 51 and 52. But
yeah,
I like the card. That's one I've been after myself because I got the Aaron Mays and Clemente from that set, but Mantle's the one I've been.
Of course, the Mantle. There's always that premium. There's always that premium, and you always feel like you're overpaying for it, especially. And there's no coincidence here. Okay, we did this on purpose here. We put these back to back right here because you have Willie Mays, who is arguably a better player than Mantle. All right, I think everyone that knows baseball history agrees that Mays might be the greatest of all time, or is at least in that top 3 category, right? So Mays, absolutely greatest of all time. And here we are. Look at these cards right here. SGC 5.5 versus a PSA 3. Look at the price difference.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, so, but it's an incredible card. So, when you go from buying the 56 Mays, right, you buy that card and it's like, oh, I got the 56 Mays. Great. Okay. Now next is the Mantle. And then you see the Mantle in some cases is double.
Yep.
You're like, what? I mean, it actually probably is more than double. The reason why this doesn't look double at the moment is because this is 2.5 grades higher right now.
Yep.
But if they were both PSA 3s, yeah, guess what? The Mantle's going to be double.
Double at least, yeah. So I never understood that, but
yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So we have some more comments coming in. Tom Grant says that Mays is about 60-40 and 70-30, but I like the card just fine. I agree. Definitely. Timeless Cardboard in the house. Back again. How you doing, man? He says it has to be well centered, but if the registration is off, I'm out. One can't be without the other. Yeah, so centering and registration. And you know what, too? I've had Travis from Jackie's and Jordan's, who's incredible wealth of information, had him on the show a bunch of times. And he talked to me about how, and I'm paraphrasing here, and I hope I'm not misquoting him too much, but he said, if you want to talk about great registration, or I mean, great centering, if you want to talk about like great centering, he says less than 10% of all vintage cards are centered. Think about that. Less than 10%. And this is a guy, he is one of the biggest sticklers I've ever met for centering, ever. He says, listen, all he does, he has the most centered collection I've ever seen. That's all he buys is centered stuff. And he says that less than 10% of all vintage cards is centered. So you think about, if you want a really well-centered card, guess what? You're going to be paying that ultimate premium. You're going to be paying what 90% of other people didn't pay.
Yep. Yeah, it's nuts because that's another thing is the more I've looked for centered cards, the harder you realize it really is.
Oh, yeah.
They're hard to find.
Absolutely.
Anywhere 50s through the 60s.
Yep. Definitely. Tom Grant says 56 is the most popular for the folks with financial limitations. The guy that can spend 3K goes to 56. And Tom Grant, as far as is that Mantle card in the top 10 of all 50s cards, he says, if not top 10, then top 20. Um, and he says Manning might be a better quarterback than Brady, but Brady won. And that's why, because Mickey Mantle won. Absolutely. So Mantle has all the rings, all the accolades. He has, uh, New York City, the most iconic franchise ever. So yeah, that definitely plays a role in it. But for it to be double, what a typical maze is still baffling to me. And I think that's why so many people talk about how much of a play can be made on still what good steals you can get on the 51 Bowman maze and the 52 Tops maze.
Yep.
And especially with 52 Tops, because Jackie Robinson like leapfrogged Willie Mays, and has been closing the gap on Mantle, even though I don't think Jackie will ever reach Mantle's value in 52 Tops. But I don't think so I think it's the pecking order as far as 52 Tops will always be Mantle, Jackie Robinson, and then Mays. So I still think Mays just always feels like one of the forgotten ones, even though that's one of the most iconic cards of all time with that rich purple background of the 52 Tops.
I love his 52 maze.
Right?
It's incredible. Every
How
time I
could
see
you?
someone post one, it makes my day.
How could you not, man? How could you not?
Cares for those people.
Yeah. And Timeless Cardboard says Griffey and Bonds remind me of Mantle and Mays. Griffey is far more beloved. And so isn't Willie Mays Barry Bonds' godfather?
Godfather, yep.
Godfather, right? Yep. Yep. And Timeless Cardboard says Mantle was more beloved. And the thing is too with Mantle was so freaking clutch. I think
Yep.
that people sometimes, and baseball historians, I think most of us do realize it, but he was always so clutch in these World Series and in these postseasons. The guy just rose to another level. He wasn't someone that blended in or just did what he normally did. He actually, from having the incredible seasons he had year after year, he even rose to the occasion even more. So he went from being, an all-star / superstar during the regular season to being the best player on the planet during the playoffs. Almost like Jeter, right?
Yep.
Like Jeter for the Yankees, Jeter, it just never folded in those moments. Jeter was always the guy, and you guys can pull up the stats, I might be wrong, but I feel like was always the guy that was hitting 357 in the playoffs, 380 in the playoffs. And it's like, this guy's playing lights out. And not to mention that, but always in the biggest moments, that's when Jeter would have a home run. That's when Mantle would have a home run. You know what I mean? In the biggest moments.
Makes him special.
Man, unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely. So Tom Grant says 52 Jackie is just a great card, in my opinion. The maze is just so. Ooh, Tom with the hot take. I would have to completely disagree with you on that, man. I think that maze might even, I don't know. I think that maze might even be better looking than the Jackie. I don't know. I could be wrong, man. It's just my opinion.
But
What was that?
I like the Jackie better personally, but it's close.
Listen, it's so hard to compare them. It's almost like saying who's better, LeBron or Kobe or Jordan, right? It's like all three cards are just incredibly iconic.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. 1956 Tops guy Matthew in the house, friend of the show, man. Matt, how you doing? He says, I love the 52 and the 56 Mays. 51 Bowman is the king for Mays, in my opinion. Tom Grant says he wasn't Barry Bonds in Pittsburgh. Matthew says Mantle was a straight up monster in the playoffs and World Series, an impossible pit. I agree, man. Mantle just was, every time I read about him or watch old clips of what he did, it's like, and that's just me being a historian that I am. I can't even imagine living through it, because you know how sometimes people really make their names in the playoffs or in the World Series, and it's like, if you weren't there, you really you don't get it. Like you just don't get why certain guys have that aura about them. But if you watch them do it, you know. Like
Yep.
we weren't like I wasn't even there for Mantle, and I still know.
Yep.
So I can only imagine how it was for people that did live it.
Like David Ortiz too. I feel like.
Oh yeah. Oh, I hated him.
I can imagine. Yep.
I hated him with such a passion, man, with such a passion. But yeah, no, I mean, but it's like I hated him because the guy was a Yankee killer.
Yep.
Yankee killer.
But what he was gonna do.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Matthew says Pitt should have been out. So Pitt, are you talking about Pittsburgh? Pitt should have been out. I don't know. Oh, out. Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. So you're saying out. All right. Vintage Collector says people talk about how Jackie was the first black Major League Baseball player to break the color barrier, but no one talks about how Mays was the first black player on the Trenton Giants. Wow. All right, man. I love that. I love that take. Thank you, man. Thank you. He says Mays had too many racial slurs thrown at him. I think just about all of the minority players back there did for sure. But if you were on the front lines and you were one of the first to to break that color barrier, then without a doubt you are definitely getting the brunt of it for sure. Matthew 1956 Tops guy says Mantle in the World Series is what made him the hobby darling. Vintage Collector says Jackie was only more popular for his color barrier break. You can't compare Jackie to Mays, not even close. Ralph Kiner even blows his stats out of the water, and he played just as long as Jackie. Oh, you're gonna get some people fired up there, man. You're gonna get some people, man, because there's some Jackie lovers that definitely in the hobby that watch the show, all of the above. So Matthew says that Jackie's numbers were outstanding. Given his age, his career numbers would have been bonkers if he had the time. He had a 10 WAR season over the age of 30, which is very rare. Matthew, all good points, man. All good points. So so definitely moving along, guys. We have 12 minutes left before the auction truly begins and that bidding window really starts. So just something to think about. We have a 1957 Tops. Dylan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that before we move on?
Oh no, I think we covered most of that one.
All right, beautiful. So next we have a 1957 Tops Roberto Clemente BVG 8.5. Look at this, man. That's a high grade. That is a look at the centering though. I mean, this card looks perfect.
Yeah, that's
this
a bad
card.
I'd easily take.
Man, this card looks unbelievable. The clean borders, you could tell with the cut on the side, you could tell that's one of those old cuts.
Yep.
Man, I love that. I love when I get an old vintage card like that has a rough cut like that because that's how they were cut. Love those. I feel like it just adds so much character and so much substance to the card when I see that. Love it.
Love his 57 too.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Wish they didn't call him Bob on it, but
I know that's how it is with a lot of his cards, though. Next, we have a 58 Tops Willie Mays BVG 7 that's sitting at 675 right now. It's got some kind of surface stuff going on there, but other than that, I mean, it's a great looking card. It's great centering, great borders. I mean, the whole nine, man. We have a 58 Tops Hank Aaron PSA 7 sitting at 750 right now. 750. We have a 58 Tops Mickey Mantle BVG 8. BVG 8. Look at that. Sitting at 4,700.
Damn.
Look at this card.
Wonder where that one lands at. The 47, you said?
40. Now it's at 5. It's at 5K right now.
That's nuts.
5K, which puts it at 6K.
The owner on that card, but I never liked the picture they used.
You don't like this picture?
I don't really like it that much. It's all right, but
I like it, man. I'm a fan for sure. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. All right. So next we have a 58 Tops Yogi Berra PSA 8 sitting at 800. Look at Yogi getting some love.
As he should.
Yeah, but those print lines are, oh my god.
I
Those
mean,
print lines kill it, man. Could you imagine if this was a PSA 8, same exact card, just no print lines? I
yep.
mean, would it have graded a 9? But even if it didn't, even if it's just stayed a PSA 8, these print lines are just kill it though.
Yeah, I wonder if that would get an 8 today. That's an old slab, right?
Yeah, it's an old slab. Yep, old number.
Huh.
Yeah. So next we have sticking with 58 tops. We have the 58 tops Mickey Mantle All-Star card, one of the most absolute iconic cards of all time. This is a BVG 8 and is sitting at 625 right now.
Not a bad price.
You own one of these?
That was the first mantle I ever bought, but I don't have it anymore now.
Yeah, this is a lot of people's first mantle. You know, it's a nice introductory mantle. You know, it's playing day, you know, and you can get a pretty high grade for a pretty affordable price. I mean, look at this thing. It's a BVG 8. It's sitting at 625 right now.
Yeah, a few years ago, I think I got mine raw for like $30 or something.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I think now raw, I mean, obviously depending on what it looks like and what kind of condition it's in, but raw I think are probably around 50 right now.
Yeah, it's not too bad for a mantle still. I don't know why
No.
they're that
Nope.
affordable compared to other ones.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. All right, let me hit these comments real quick. So, going to these comments. So, there's a debate going on about Jackie, and somehow poor Ralph Kiner was dragged into the mix. So Vintage Collector says, yeah, Kiner was an absolute monster. Stats aren't even close. Troy in the house, my good friend Troy. Troy, how are you doing, sir? He says, good evening, gentlemen. Just between you and me, any cards that you are targeting at the National? Wow. So, yeah, Troy wants to know, hey, what are you guys looking out for? Richard Price in the house says the New York effect in cards is a real thing. Without a doubt.
Yeah,
Without a doubt. When you play in a big market, absolutely.
yep, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
definitely a real thing. And here's the thing, if you also win
Oh,
on top of
yep.
playing in the big market, forget about it. Could you imagine what Patrick Ewing cards would be if he won like 3
Two
rings?
chips. Yep.
Oh my god. He would be like, you know, borderline, you know, in that Tim Duncan category of top 10 ever.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
Duncan's probably what, like somewhere between 8 and 10 all time. Like
I
on
put
probably most people's lists, right? Like if you had to, but if Ewing won 3 rings, yeah, I would probably say you would throw him right in the mix.
yep, without a doubt.
Um,
Especially in
so,
baseball, like those rings hold more weight than baseball or any
yeah,
other sport, really. Besides, I guess quarterbacks and stuff in the NFL. But
yep. Vintage Collector says Kiner was labeled the next Ruth before he got injured. And Vintage Collector says Jackie was part of New York, though, so he won that popularity contest. Jackie was a good player. He just wasn't among the greats. Tom Grant says Jackie's best years were from age 30 to 35. He was a rookie at 29, so there's no comparison. Triple print and readily available. Matthew, who is a math whiz, by the way, so be careful with him. He says Kiner, his career WAR is like 48 over 10 seasons, age 23 to 32. Jackie has 64 over 11 years. Jackie was a far superior player even without his prime. Yeah, so you know it is what it is. I mean, great arguments, all great players. I mean, when you're comparing the goats, that's just what it comes down to is, um, you
yeah,
know,
like Jackie. But
yeah, absolutely. And then we have MJ or I don't even know, M Jordan and a goat. He says he's looking for a 96 Jordan. So he's probably answering the questions about national. You know, what are you looking for at national that Troy posed? So we're definitely not going to be looking at any Jordans here, my man. But definitely feel free to hang out and chat for sure. So 59 mantle, PSA 5. I mean, look at this. This is a great looking card.
another one of my favorite mantle cards.
Oh
Look,
yeah.
people don't love his 59, but
I
one of my
I
favorite.
think
50s, honestly. I've always loved the 59 set.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of like the circle, like the almost like the camera lens,
I love
effect going around it. Um, but I mean, look at this card though. The edges are completely clean. That looked like it was just printed yesterday.
bright red.
I mean, the edges, the corners, everything, the centering, everything on this card, at least from an eye appeal perspective, looks like it could be a 7.
Yeah, those old SGC slabs that were terrible.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I
You,
know. But
honestly, you could just send them in, but
so I know people, and I'm sure we all do that, send in the SGC slabs to get them reslabbed, and from what I've heard, they do them like overnight. It's like door to door. You'll have it back in 5 days from sending it. It's unbelievable. Yeah, SGC does a great job. Great job. So 59 tops Willie Mays, BBG8 is sitting at 925 right now. 925. Then we have a couple more Mickey Mantle All-Star cards. 59 tops sitting at 1250. And we have a 60 tops All-Star PSA 9 sitting at 2400.
damn,
Man.
you don't see many Mantle 9s out there,
Wow.
even if it's one of those All-Star cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're definitely seeing some high grade all-star cards here with him. So I would imagine it was someone that was an all-star mantle collector, right? This probably all came from the same set, even though all these slabs look different. The 58 was a BVG. This was, an older PSA, but the certain numbers aren't, in a row. So they don't line up, but still, I would imagine this all came from the same collection, really high grade mantle. Makes me wonder how long this person's had these for.
Right. Yeah, they're all older slabs too.
Yep.
Probably been sitting on them.
Yep, absolutely. So we have 61 tops, Sandy Koufax, PSA 8 sitting at 675. We have a 61 tops, Hank Aaron, PSA 9. PWCC eye appeal top 15% sitting at 97.50. Listen, without a doubt, this has all come from the same collection. As far as the Hank Aaron's go, for the last 3 weeks now, we have had so many high grade Hank Aaron's. I mean, PSA 9s and PSA 10s galore. They have to be coming from the same collection because you never see this many high grade Hank Aaron's pop up like this. Unbelievable.
Love the 61.
Wow. I tell you, man, I love the pictures. And this is part of, I think the romanticism of vintage cards is that I see so many incredible vintage cards that are all shot at the ballpark like before the game.
Yeah.
You could span over 10 to 15 years of top sets, and it seems like they were all shot at the ballpark. You see, teammates taking batting practice behind them. You see like stands and this is what I like about it is like the stands, it's not like they're always empty. Like
No.
you see them like half full. You see like people are starting to come into the game or maybe watch BP, watch some batting practice. And to me, there's just something that is so cool about knowing the photo shoot was taken at the ballpark. You know what I mean? Like at the ballpark, there it is. Like he's getting ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I love those old, especially the ones where you could tell they actually, took their time to pose. And today it's all action shots. So
Yeah.
the action shots are great, but it's just
you know what? And I agree.
Older cards.
And I think that I've always really had an appreciation for the action shot, but like just the way you worded it right there, I think, it's like everything's action shot now.
Yep.
Unless it's like a draft day card, where it's like, oh, draft day, and now they're posing in a suit or something. Unless it's that, it's all action shots.
Yep. No portraits or nothing.
So I wonder that leads me to believe that it probably has to do with the players more so than the companies, right? Because I would imagine the companies would probably want to try to get some action shots.
Right. Yeah.
But the players are like, I ain't doing that. Like, you got to pay me for my time kind of thing, right? And the company's probably like, well, we can't pay every single player for their time to come to a photo shoot. So, you know what? We'll just take action shots without a doubt.
A lot quicker that way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so Matthew says, I've always liked the Upper Deck Mantle Griffey card, but it's outrageously expensive. Yeah, that's the dual autograph one, right? It's like the blue card. It's like the Seattle Mariner blue kind of, and it's a painting. It looks like a painting of both. You know the card, Dylan?
If I seen it, I probably would.
Oh yeah, you would know it. It's literally just a headshot of
Oh, Mantle Griffin. That's what.
Griffey and Mantle.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Okay,
Yep.
that dual.
So
No, the dual auto one sells for a ton.
oh yeah, it definitely depends on the grade, but I know the last time I looked at one that I saw available, I remember looking up and saying like, okay, how much is this going for? You know, I might make a run at it. I think it was like 15K, and I'm like if I'm spending 15K, I'm not spending 15K on a modern card. You know, that's just the way I kind of felt at the time. And Matthew says that the artwork is a little funky to me. Certainly a big deal for those of us who ripped 1994 Upper Deck. The card was impossible. I'm wondering what was the print run on that 94 Upper Deck Mantle and Griffey. I am curious.
I feel like you don't see them that often pop up.
Yeah, you know, I feel like I see them more often than you would think.
Really,
You
I
know,
haven't seen them in a while.
on Instagram, you know, I have, you know, probably like 5 or 10 like high-end dealers that I'm pretty friendly with, and they deal in the goats, you know, so they're not really prospecting. You know, these high-end dealers that I follow, they're not prospecting. You know,
No,
it's all either vintage or it's like really cool, like game used Dan Marino, John Elway, Joe Montana stuff, like, you
right?
know, really cool stuff. So I feel like I'm seeing those Mantle Griffies pop up constantly, but it could just be like the same 1 or 2 cards just constantly getting flipped back and forth. That's probably what it is, you
Okay.
know, because I agree. I know it's definitely a super short print, that card.
Yeah, that's what I always thought, but I don't really keep up with the more modern stuff, so I would never really knew much about it. But
Yeah.
a great
Yeah.
card though.
Yeah, definitely. So before we move on, Vintage Collector says that he said, I hear there's many of those cards that are questionable on the market with the autos, where one or the other was later acquired by, say, Griffey. Matthew says it's weird because there are versions with just Mantle, just Griffey, or both. I know some cards have a later in-person Griffey auto. You can tell by the signature. And then M.
And
Jordan, a goat, says collectors have long desired the pack pulled 94 Upper Deck Mantle and Griffey dual auto, but Upper Deck made 3 versions of the card that could be pack pulled. See, so that's where it's coming. Now we're talking like just Mantle, just Griffey, and then the dual. And Matthew says exactly right, vintage. And MJ to Goat says one with the Mantle signature only, one with the Griffey signature only, one with both signatures. The total print run of all 3 is 1,500 each. And each features a hologram sticker on the back with a serial number that can be used to verify the authenticity of the autograph. Thank you for that, my man. That was, you came through with some stats right there, man. I'll take your word for it. Yeah, man. So I'll tell you, this is one of the great parts about this show, man. Could you imagine just doing this every single week
yeah,
in? Dude, the knowledge that like I feel like that I just completely get hit with constantly. I love it, man. I love it. Um, all right. So next we have a 61 Topps Mantle MVP PSA 8, probably from the same collection, right? Sitting at 1,000. Look, this is when you could start to really see. There's some cards that really stand out of where Mickey Mantle is starting to look like he's aging a little bit. You know, like we all know that he was a partier, right? Like his, you know, that's been well documented on how much fun he had. But this right here, you can see he's starting to look a little bit older. He's starting to look, I mean, you think about what the 58 All-Star looks like, the image of him swinging, he still looks like a kid. And then there's this 3 years later. But yeah, so
like downhill for him. I feel like
what was that?
After the 1960 set, I feel like a lot of his cards were pretty much downhill after that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, you figure how many games he played though, right? So of course he's gonna be he's going to look tired. He's going to look older. It's going to age him. All the games he played, all the postseasons he played, everything that he did. Plus, he was the most in-demand player in the world at that time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then and then you have companies that realize that have by now been 10 years in the game, like Topps, right? 10 years in the game, realizing the money they're making, the popularity of these players. So, I didn't even realize I didn't have the screen up. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that. But you start to realize so they're printing these cards like to oblivion, I would imagine. I'm curious to know what the print count was on like 52 tops versus 61 tops. I'd be curious to know that. So all right, guys, so cards have been selling already. And Dylan, I know you have to go in a few minutes, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset these pages now, and I'm going to go back to page 1 of the favorites because cards are already selling like crazy. So curious to know what some of these have went for. We'll see what is still available.
54 Mays is sold yet or not? Curious
54.
that Mays.
What'd that go for?
That's what I was wondering. I wasn't sure. Curious what that was going to end at.
So still available. We have the 52 Bowman PSA 2, and that's sitting at $19.75. We have Campy PSA 8 53 tops. That's sitting at $13.50 right now. We have that Red Heart Mickey Mantle at $5,500 right now after buyer's premium. That's going to be approaching $7K. We have the 55 tops Hank Aaron. That's sitting at $62.50. Wow. That's a beautiful card, man. Oh, I love this Aaron card. Love it.
Love those second-year cards, too.
What was that?
People love those second-year cards.
Yeah. Oh, listen, there's such a play for those second-year cards for sure. It's because the rookie cards are just out of a lot of people's reach. Let's be honest. They're just out of a lot of people's reach.
Yes, they are, especially that Hank Aaron getting nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
That really jumped the last couple of years. It was always expensive, but
what, the 55 or 54?
For Hank, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Feels like.
Yep. So we have the 56 tops Ted Williams that's sitting at $10.25. 58 tops Hank Aaron that's sitting at $8.75 right now. We have the 59 Mantle sitting at $1,300. This Mantle, 61 tops Mantle MVP still sitting at $1,000. Look at these high grade Aarons. Isn't it crazy?
A lot of them.
65 tops. 65 tops. PSA 9 sitting at $3,500. This thing's over 4K with buyer's premium right now. Man, the amount of high grade Hank Aaron's that have come on this site in the last few weeks has been mind boggling. Oh, 67 O-Pee-Chee Mickey Mantle PSA 8 $2,600. Wow. I wonder what the pop count is on the O-Pee-Chee. 1970 tops Hank Aaron PSA 9 sitting at $2,500. 72 tops Hank Aaron sitting at $2,100. And then now these are the cards that I've already sold that were on here. Now look at this Carl Hubble going for $7,200. Wow.
That's his best card, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
72. What was that, an 8?
PSA 8, yep. This Jackie went for $7,200. 49 Bowman Jackie Robinson.
What was that, 3?
4.5. That's a great price for that.
Seems like a good price, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? I was asking earlier. I wonder, and I'm curious if anyone in the comments, how common are these lines, that leave this checkerboard effect on this card? If you guys can see, I'm curious if anyone can answer that.
Yeah, that one I'm not too sure of with the 49 set.
I mean, they really stand out on the white jersey. But then when you even look all up behind the red, if you look closely, you can see them all. They just look like tiny little, they almost look like the fibers from the card, like starting to peek through almost like it was pressed down too hard and flattened or something. Because they're perfect lines. They're perfect.
It's
They're
weird.
perfect. Right to left and top to bottom. I know.
I didn't even notice that when I was looking.
So I'm curious what that did to the overall
Value
what
of it.
that did to the overall value. And I'm like, because and this is a PSA 4.5 and because of those lines, when I saw the PWCC top 30% eye appeal, I was kind of like, huh. I just kind of looked at that a little strangely, but that's just me. So let's hit some of these comments real quick. I see comments continuing to roll in. Floating Heads is in the house. How you doing? How you doing? Matthew 56 Top says that 61 All-Star mantle is awesome. Looks amazing with his signature. Vintage Collector says I always enjoyed the Facsimile Auto 1980 exhibit cards with players like Mays. Colors came in red in Sophia, and each color was printed to 2,500 copies. Matthew says that Campy, talking about the Campanella, is way nice. Vintage Card Collector says, I also own the photo used to make the Maze card, so it was even sweeter. That's amazing, by the way, Vintage Collector. He says, I always liked the 58 and the 61 Aaron. OPG mantle. Wow. Matthew 56 Top Guy says, me too. Love those ones. I actually think Hank has fantastic cards in the 54 to 61 run. Listen, Matthew, I would agree, man. I think he probably arguably might have the nicest run of like first 7 or 8 years of cards without a doubt, man. Aaron's cards all look incredible. They all, even the 54 tops, and I have a strong disliking for the 54 top set. Even the Hank Aaron, I think, looks great with just the orange color and what his pose is. I think it looks great.
Yeah, he doesn't have a bad card.
Yeah.
Not like 10 years.
Yep. Vintage Collector says, speaking of greats, Hank Aaron is severely underrated. Matthew says, Adam Wise would know. I know he loves that card. Aaron is crazy underrated. I stopped collecting most sports cards due to grading discrepancies. But if I got back into it, I would totally do an Aaron and Mays run. Vintage Collector, I'm curious to know, man, what made you stop collecting most sports cards? I would love to know that, and I would love to pick your brain on that. If you want, you can email me. Email me at sportscardtherapist@gmail. Sportscardtherapist@gmail. I'd love to hear more about that. Sounds like it might make for a good conversation. Tom Grant says, I think it's common, but it's not an issue I look at often. M. Jordan the Goat says, my screen name is M. Jordan the Goat. See you at the Wolfpack trade night, brother. Love to hear that, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope to see everyone at the Wolfpack trade night that I'm putting on with my fellow Wolfpack members, man. Definitely going to be a very good time. And Vintage Collector gave me a thumbs up. I appreciate that, man. Sportscardtherapist@gmail.com. So yeah, Dylan, I know you have to run soon. Any final, what was that?
I said, yeah, I got a couple more minutes, but
okay, cool. Listen, just you let me know when you have to go, then, man, because I'm enjoying the conversation. So you let me know.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's see. We're gonna refresh the page, see what we are looking at here, see what cards are going for, guys. If there's any cards that you want me to pull up, because either you're looking at, you're curious about, you just want us to chat about, or if there's any like huge big ticket items that are selling, like I know some of these basketball cards have been selling for insane numbers, like 50K for a PSA 10 of a common for 69 tops. Could you imagine paying 50K for a common player?
That no one heard about.
Man, unbelievable.
Love that Campy, though.
Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
One of my favorite players.
Is he?
Yeah. Always like collecting Campy.
Listen, when it comes to, you talk about catchers too, right? I mean, catcher is just such a hard position to play. And truly, I mean, he's one of the greatest catchers in the history of the game, without a doubt. Just ever, he was the heart and soul of that Dodgers team that he played for. And even beside that, being, being in the Negro leagues for as long as he did, I mean, when you're just talking Major League Baseball statistics, that's one thing. But if you look at the Negro League statistics as well, he was a 3-time National League MVP, 51, 53, and 55, World Series champion in 55, 8-time All-Star. He was the Negro League batting champion in 45.
Yep, didn't even get a full career, and he won 3 MVPs, which is nuts.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, talk about him and oh my God, I'm drawing a mind blank right now. I'm drawing a complete mind blank. Yankees catcher.
Elston Howard?
No. Why
No.
am I drawing such a mind blank right now? Yogi Berra. Yogi.
Oh, okay.
How am I drawing that such a mind blank? So yeah, I mean, you think about him and Yogi, right? Like him playing for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Yogi playing, for the Yankees, and just I mean, you have the two best pitchers in all of baseball sitting there in the same city, basically.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And yeah, so you have Campy winning the MVP in 51, 53, 55. And then you have Yogi Berra winning the MVP in 51, 54, 55. I mean, talk about like, have you ever heard of such a rivalry? I feel like the closest thing that we ever got to even something close to a rivalry like that, at least in this last generation, was probably like Jeter and A-Rod both playing shortstop, for the Mariners or Texas Rangers and the Yankees,
Yep.
I mean,
it was a good time to be in New York.
Unbelievable. So Campy wins the MVP in 51, 53, 55. Yogi wins the MVP 51, 54, 55. It's so mind-blowing to think about the kind of competition and the sportsmanship that had to have been taking place in that city.
Yep. And catchers back MVPs is nuts.
Yeah.
Barely
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tom Grant says best catcher of all time. So I think he's talking about Campy right there, as best catcher of all time. And D Pires, thank you, man. I mean, I just completely blanked on Yogi's name. I'm literally sitting there looking at him, hearing his voice commentating Yankees games. I'm picturing him with the glasses, all the quotes. I have a Yogi PC, and I just completely just one of those moments. So Tom Grant says Honus Wagner is the vintage GOAT. Honus Wagner. I tell you, we don't see too many Honus Wagner cards on PWCC, and I'm wondering if that's just because people are, they're just holding them.
Yeah, they don't pop up too often.
Yeah.
Because they don't pop up a little more on there, but.
So let's see. We're going to check out. I want to see if there's any big price basketball that's happening right now. I know you are more of a baseball guy, but some of these basketball cards these last couple weeks have been going for obscene amounts. 69 tops, Joe Caldwell rookie, PSA 9, 3,800. So all these huge ticket cards that I shouldn't say all, but anytime you see PSA 10, PSA 9, like, I mean, they're set builders, right? I mean, if you are like a team collector or a player collector, would you necessarily be going for PSA 10s?
I don't think so.
I feel like it has to be because of set collecting, right?
Yeah, I would imagine high grade set collecting.
But the crazy thing is this, right? The crazy thing is when you see a huge card of a common 1970 whoever PSA 10, and it's like a pop 1, but you see it going for like 40K. It's a pop 1. So what that tells me is there's at least 2 people bidding on this card that are putting everything that they can into getting this card. So if they don't win it, their set is busted.
Yep.
Because there's only one.
That's got to be heartbreaking to lose that.
I mean, I almost feel like when you are dabbling in that much money, though,
You
it's like I feel for you, but I don't feel for you.
yeah, exactly.
It's like if you're gonna spend 50K on something like that, then I don't even know what to say. Um, so Tom Grant said Honus Wagner is the vintage GOAT. Richard Price came along and said, I beg to differ. I'll go with Babe Ruth as the vintage GOAT. And if you guys watched my YouTube live that I did in the hour before leading up to coming on here to do this PWCC show, I had this super high end vintage collector, Pete, who goes by Sports Card Pete on Instagram. And his two main guys that he collects are Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth. And he had an incredible answer when I asked him to describe, like, tell me in your mind the difference between these two as far as collectability goes. And so Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Babe Ruth, whoever is the case, but Pete also brought up a point that said anything that's Honus Wagner and that is a portrait has been on fire recently, like these last 6 months to a year, and prices have been
Yeah,
through the roof, and it's almost impossible to get anything. So, so yeah, Richard Price says, I'll beg to differ. I'll go with Babe Ruth as a vintage GOAT. Tom Grant says he thinks it's pure set registry. That's why they're spending so much money on these cards. Tom Grant also says that Babe Ruth is available. Honus Wagner, not so much. So you're not finding many,
no,
cards at all.
yeah,
So,
we're
um,
there.
so in your mind, who is the vintage GOAT for you? Who, and not, I don't even want to just say vintage GOAT, but like who are you going after the most? Who do you appreciate the most? Or who are you going toward the most? What is your North Star, Dylan?
I'm big on Jackie's always up there. I personally love collecting like any Walter Johnson cards I can get my hands on if I'm in the market. But I think if you're talking overall general hobby, if you do like a Mount Rushmore, I'd probably put it as like Mantle, Jackie, Ruth, and I'd say Cobb or Honus. But I mean, Cobb cards are a little easier to find than the Honuses, but
Yeah.
he also played longer. I think he
Yeah.
played into the 20s, but I think Honus Wagner was done by like 1915 or 16 or something.
And then went on to coach managing.
Yeah, he's got a couple coaching cards, but they're not nearly as desirable as the playing day cards. But at least, I mean, that little Mount Rushmore is, I guess, is in terms of baseball. But I feel like when you talk vintage, it's mostly baseball.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
kind of dominates the vintage market for the most part.
So Dylan, let me ask you. So being the vintage collector that you are, do you find yourself looking at any kind of vintage card? Because like right here, I ask you this because what I did was I started the auction all over basically just to see what's still left and what people are still bidding on. And then I sorted it by the earliest year. And the first year, the first card to pop up, this is the earliest card that is still available. This is a 1910 C56 hockey Jack Laviolette, I guess. Laviolette. So basically, it's a 1910 hockey card. If a card like this became available and it was in your price range, is that something that you think you would make a run at just because it's vintage, or do you just stay far away?
Nah, probably not. I mean, I've been tempted. I stay mostly baseball, but um, I've been tempted by a couple other sports cards, but I've been looking at a lot of football lately, actually. Like 50 Bowman football cards, but
Oh yeah.
that's a rabbit hole I know if I start going down. I don't need I don't need another distraction. So, but
Yeah.
I personally would probably stay away from it. It was a nice card. I've never seen that set before. I didn't even know they had hockey cards back then.
Yeah, and just looking at it, just looking at the card right now, it definitely looks like just like a T206 looks like it was, a cigarette card. Yeah, right. C56,
Yeah,
I'd imagine C stands for cigarette. But
which
yeah, so
I personally would stay away, but
What was that?
I said it's nothing I would personally spend the money on, but it's a nice card though.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know
So
about hockey collecting, but
so what I've found myself doing, and not even intentionally, I think I've just kind of not even thinking about it, is um you know, because I'm always looking through PWCC now, I find myself picking up certain, I guess what you'd consider pop culture cards, because it's so hard to really put it in a category. But one card that I just got in the mail like 2 days ago from a prior auction, PWCC, that I just got was so this is a 1901 Beethoven.
that's sick. Yeah, I've never seen that either.
Yeah, pretty nuts, right? I mean,
Yeah, I've seen some.
1901 Beethoven card. And you know, like looking behind me, all ones I've gotten from this auction, just because I find myself looking at like just anything vintage at this point. But I'm looking at like Walt Disney, Albert Einstein,
I like
Winston Churchill, like,
Walt Disney cards are cool. I've been seeing a lot of those.
yeah. So it's so I just wanted to ask for that reason, because it's like, you know, vintage I vintage baseball will always be my first love,
Yep.
without a doubt, like I think many of us. But when you start looking at some of the other vintage cards, for the same exact reason that we're so drawn to vintage baseball, is a big part of the reason why I can find myself drawn to other vintage. You
Yeah.
start thinking about the history, that person, what that person meant to mankind. Because I mean, it's like when you start looking at the impact that a baseball player had versus you know
Walt
a
Disney.
historical figure like Walt Disney.
Yep. It's
You know,
nuts.
it's like, man, holy moly.
Yep.
Um,
Some
so
Twitter collect a lot of that. Those early 1900 like Thomas Edison cards, George Washington cards from like the 1800s and stuff.
yeah,
Uh, cool. I mean, I'm not into it in terms of buying, but there's times where I'll do some looking around on eBay and stuff, but more or less just for curiosity purposes more than spending. But
yeah,
definitely interesting.
yeah. And Tom Grant, based on what you were saying, you were talking about the Mount Rushmore, Dylan, and Tom Grant says the Mount Rushmore is Ruth, Wagner, Johnson, Mathewson. Oh, Cobb. Oh, so this is one more than a Mount Rushmore. He says first Hall of Fame class cannot go wrong, without a doubt. And yeah, exactly. Mathewson was one of the, like you said, all of them were the top first five ever
Yep.
voted in. So I mean, that's incredible. First Hall of Fame class, you definitely can't go wrong there. People talk about buying, like, oh, let me buy the first year Prism set, 2012 Prism. It's like, no, why don't you buy the first ever Hall of Fame class, punk?
Yeah.
Sit down.
Yeah. That was actually a little project I was working on recently. The first inaugural class. Which I was missing the Ruth until I finally landed at that Ruth about a month ago, or whatever it was.
Really?
Yeah, there was a strip card. I ended up finally
Yeah,
getting.
yeah, yeah,
What was it, the 551?
yeah, yeah. Good stuff, man. Do you have it with you?
Uh, yeah, I think. Hold on one second. Right here.
So let's see. We'll go to you first, and then we'll ask the question.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I got it right here. This is
Oh, did you win that off last week's auction?
no, I ended up buying this on actually got it on Net 54.
I think that same card, not the same copy, but that same card I think was on PWCC last week.
Yeah, it was a good price on it. Do you know how much that one went for?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Let me
Troy, my friends did give me a tie cob. Yes, that was
so Troy wants to know, that was you?
Yeah, that was me. That
So
was
tell the story behind that. So this says, Dylan, didn't your friends get you a Ty Cobb card for your birthday? So tell us about that.
yeah. It wasn't. I think it was actually a wedding gift.
It was, yeah, because you got married last year, right?
I got married in December. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had no idea. My one buddy Ben actually DM'd me like a random night one day and said, "Yeah, you're gonna get something in the mail tomorrow. Just record yourself opening it." So I'm like, all right. Wasn't expecting anything, not anything remotely with what I got, but yeah, set my camera up, start opening it. I open it up. It was inside of a cigar box. So I'm like, first I thought that was the treat there, and I was it
You
was at
you thought they bought you a box of cigars?
there was like an old like Phillies box, Philly cigar.
Oh, okay.
You could tell it was like probably from like the '60s or something. So I thought that was cool, and then I opened that up and I had one of those eBay authentication things in there. And then when I opened that up, it was the Thai Cobb, which I think I almost cried opening that one.
Wow, absolutely, man,
But no,
absolutely.
still can't believe it every time I look at it. But yeah, it was nice. I think they got like 75 people together on that one, which is nuts.
75 people contributed.
Yeah, that was.
I don't even think I know 75 people.
I read the list of names. I felt like it was never going to end.
That's unbelievable, man. That's I think that's a testament to, what kind of person you are.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a special one.
Wow. So how are you looking on time, Dylan?
I'm probably gonna hop off here in a minute.
All right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you very much. I'm sure all the watchers, all the listeners, they appreciate you coming on, man. It was a pleasure having you.
Always a pleasure, man. Look forward to doing it again.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Rob. Take it easy.
All right. All right. So getting back to this, let's see. Take my mug off of here. All right. So getting back to the auction, this has been sold. So this is a 1958 World Series Game 2 full ticket. Yankees versus Braves PSA 9 mint. I have something. I just got up real quick. I actually have something extremely similar. That's a PSA 9. This is just graded authentic, but I literally have the same exact ticket right in my case behind me. So that's a 1958 World Series. This was Game 7. So this was the game clincher right here. Yankees won. We won the series that year. I'm curious to know what game that it was. Does it say what game that was? This was Game 2. All right, so this was Game 2. Still an incredible piece. I mean, a PSA 9. Look at that thing. Jeez. It still has all the perforation and everything from where it got torn. I mean, this thing is in perfect condition. Looking at mine, this is just half of a ticket, it looks like. So that's probably why it was authentic, because that one is a jumbo size. So, but that's a great ticket stub right there. I'm curious, if anyone here watching, if anyone collects any sort of ticket stubs, I'd be curious to know that. I think that there's ticket stubs are trying to figure out here how to get back. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of solo screen. Here we go. All right. So let's see what else is going on here. We have a Bobby Fischer card, PSA 10, that just sold for $11.70. We have some soccer cards going on here. We have some basketball. Look at this, 1969 Topps Joe Caldwell, pop 1 of 8, PSA 9, went for $9,900. And Tom Grant, I think it was you that said that goes back to that the PSA set registry people that we were talking about, right? And Vintage Collector says, I have a Willie Mays Fenway Park debut ticket. That's huge. Love that. Floating Heads says, I just got my first ticket stub from the 1948 Cleveland game where they clinched a tie for the pennant. What a stub. That is awesome. Vintage Collector says, tickets are neat and rare. I also own Griffey's first starting lineup with the Mariners in 1989 spring training. Wow. That's definitely something. That's a collector's item right there. Let's see. We have some more 1972 tops. Look at this. PSA 10. These are pop. Look. This right here. Joe Brisker, pop 1 of 4. This next one, 72 tops, pop 1 of 3 PSA 10. So when you look at just these two cards, I'm using just these two cards as an example right here. What this is telling me is that there's likely only 3 people on Earth that can build the PSA 10 set. Look at this. Next, we have some Bruce Lee cards that went up for auction. I actually owned a bunch of these cards, and I bought a ton of them raw. Didn't know what I wanted to do with them. Just thought they were really cool, and was like, and then I kind of decided maybe I'll grade them. And then once I didn't end up grading them, I ended up just selling them raw again. I probably lost money on it, but whatever. I owned them for a little while, so the utility value of them was still there, me being able to own the card, you know. This right here is second year Wayne Gretzky 1980 tops PSA 7 miscut. Look at that. Sold for $62. I don't know. That kind of feels like a steal, but I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know the Wayne Gretzky market or anything like that, but let's see. So starting over again from the very beginning to see what is left. What is still left on this auction? Not much. There is not much left whatsoever. These 72 tops still going strong. Now we're getting into Pokemon. That's how you know it's bad, when you're starting to get into Pokemon. We have some football, some basketball. We have a dual logo man right there. Look at that. 1 of 1, only copy ever made. That's only at 500 right now. Let's see. We have some Curry Golds. We have some baseball. And that's how you know we are running out. There's not much left. Not much left. We have some video games. Oh, 007 for Nintendo 64. Listen, call me crazy. I would probably buy, maybe not this version, The World Is Not Enough, but the original 007 for Nintendo 64. It was like the first ever, I don't know if it was the first ever first-person shooter game, but I would probably buy that graded copy. I would probably buy that. Like a Super Mario Brothers, like the original Super Mario, or maybe the Super Mario 3, like graded, unopened. I think I would buy that. Because, you know, I think, you know, a big part of what cards does for me is, you know, being able to own a physical representation of something that means a lot to me. To me, I think that's like, you know, that's pretty cool. Let's see. So Tom Grant says, I don't collect tickets. A friend that collects tells me most full tickets you see are actually rain tickets. Oof. Ouch. Tom Grant dropping some knowledge here, man, and throwing some cold water on that whole tickets are valuable thing. Most full tickets are actually rain tickets. Does that make a difference? Does that make a difference with collectability? I'm curious. I feel like to me it does. If the ticket was printed and the game was a rain delay and did not get played, does that make the ticket less valuable? I think absolutely it does. I think that the entire value behind the idea of a ticket stub is the event that happened and the event that this ticket stub was to gain entry to. So if it was a rain delay, to me, that definitely plays a role in it. Even if the game was played 2 days later or a day later, to me, that absolutely makes a difference. Floating Heads says, I also rationalize losing money on cards as entertainment value, but not too often. Listen, I completely agree. I think, we with how much fun that we have in this hobby and how much the type of enjoyment that we get out of it, I think there is a cost that's associated with that. And if you are someone that just, you're so good at this hobby, you just don't lose money on cards and that's not in it for you, then that's awesome. But I know for most of us, even during the pandemic or whenever, a card is hot or a player is hot, sometimes it's hard to not continue to buy or to continue to, uh, kind of formulate our PC. I'm still buying, still always buying. And Degenerate Card Collector, you are right, my friend. He says Doom was the first person shooter game, I think you're right, my friend. And that was the computer game, and to shoot the shotgun you hit the space bar, I think you hit the space bar, and that's what that did. So Mike Werble, how you doing, Mike? How you doing, man? Says PWCC quoted, PSA pop counts are not always accurate. You should check for yourself if it's important to you. Wow. Yeah, man. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself. So what you're saying is when you are bidding on a card, just like we talked about that 1972 Topps basketball card, if it's a PSA 10 or whatever the grade is, and it says pop 1 of 3, do your own research and go to the PSA site itself, is what you're saying. I think that's great advice. That's absolutely something I would recommend doing. So, Mike, kudos to you, my man, for bringing up that point. Because if what you're spending on a card is, if you're basing it on a pop count or you're basing it on anything that is third party information or fourth party information, whatever the case, then yeah, without a doubt, you do your due diligence if you're spending money, and stuff like that is important to you for those reasons. Floating Heads says sometimes when you move a card quick for a grail, you have to take a hit. Floating Heads, man, I'm with you on that. I have moved so many cards quickly because sometimes that's how cards come up that we want. A card comes up, a grail comes up, and we need to move stuff now. Well, you know what? The people, I know for me, the people that I move, listen, when you send cards out to auction, and I'm not saying PWCC specifically, but I'm just saying in general, I've heard horror stories of trying to send your cards out to auction, and at the earliest it could take 2 to 3 weeks to get put up, but at the latest I've heard of some people waiting 6 months. So they've been without their cards for 6 months to send to an auction, only to not get what they were hoping to get for it. And we all know the risks associated with auctions, but regardless, so yeah, a lot of times if I need to move a card quick, I can usually make a couple calls. But here's the thing, the calls that I'm making are to people that are high-end dealers that need to buy that card at a certain percentage for it to make sense to them, which means they're usually buying cards at 70 to 85% of comps, depending on the card, depending on the rarity, depending on the scarcity. So I need to know that ahead of time. Right? I need to know that, okay, if I'm trying to move a card within the next 24 hours because a grail opportunity just popped up, I need to immediately come to terms with the fact that if I move this card, it's likely going to be for a loss, or it'll likely be below comps. So, it's just kind of the game we play. It's a game we play. And unless you are someone that, and, this is a conversation I was having with Pete earlier before we went on, before I recorded tonight's PWCC episode, which I've been on for an hour and 40 minutes, I did an hour-long interview with Sports Card Pete. That's going to be airing tomorrow morning on the Sports Card Therapist podcast. We talked about how he moves cards around and keeps the money just in case a big card pops up. And I asked him, how do you have such discipline to not spend that money? Because I know for me, if I move cards around and I have cards coming in my line of vision, it is really hard for me to have that kind of discipline, because so many things look so good. So many things look so good. And Mike asks me, Rob, did you see the 1901 Ogden's Napoleon? No, I did not. And I think you're asking me because I have the 1901 Ogden's Beethoven. I did not see the Napoleon. Was that in tonight's auction, or was that in a different auction? Anyways, I appreciate you asking me about that, Mike. So yeah, so I think, moving cards for a loss, that's stuff that, a lot of us do. And the thing is, most of us move cards and put it right back into the hobby. So either way, it's staying in the ecosystem. It's continuing to, you know, help grow the hobby and keep the money here. So Mike, I did not see that card, but I appreciate you asking me about that. I'll look into it. I'm not super familiar with the 1901 Ogden set. When I bought the Beethoven card, I saw it pop up and I saw it was a really cool card. I'm familiar somewhat with the set it's a part of, but I'm definitely going to do some more research into that. So I guess that is it, guys. Listen, I appreciate you being here, and I'm always looking to bring on a random guest, a random, viewer of the show, or a vintage connoisseur. If you know your stuff when it comes to vintage and you think you would want to hop on one Sunday night with me on a PWCC live like this, just like Dylan did. Dylan just sat there. He was on his cell phone. He had good reception. You could hear him clearly, and I was cool with that. And if anyone ever wants to hop on like that, definitely shoot me an email. Okay, shoot me an email, sportscardtherapist@gmail.com. I would love to have you on. Sportscardtherapist@gmail.com. Love to have you on. And I guess that's it, guys. I guess that's it. I appreciate you. If you're watching this, hopefully you like and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully you like this video. And, hopefully most of you guys will be at the National. I will be at the National for 4 days. Looking forward to it. I have my own trade night that me and my fellow Wolfpack members are putting on Friday night directly across the street from the convention center. So that is going to be an absolute blast. An absolute blast. Looking forward to that. There'll be more and more details, I'm sure, on that and I'll be talking about that as we get closer. But hopefully I can meet a lot of you guys at the National. And I guess that's it, guys. As always, take care of yourselves and your collection. Have a good one.